my name is Elizabeth. Welcome back to Excel for Your Parents. Today we're going to be making a KPI dashboard using Power Query to append some data together so we can look at actuals versus budgets and make it refreshable. We're also going to be using pivot tables and pivot charts to kind of add some spark to our KPI dashboard, as well as create our own KPI metrics using spark lines. So join me over on the dashboard. If you would like to, you can go down to the description and download a copy of the data so that you can follow along. Okay, so I'm going to show you what the final product is going to look like before we get into all of this. But basically, we've got two different tables. We have a bike sales table. So this is just very simple sales data and then cost data for a small bike shop. We've got very simple product names, dates for the last 2 years, so 23 and 24. And we have a small, medium, large for a size. We got sales amount, bike cost. Also a bike budget. It was put together a very, very simple revenue-based budget. And our end product is going to look like this with pivot tables off on the side. So let's get started. If you download the raw file, this is what it's going to look like. The very first thing I always do is make all of my data into tables. I put it into a table format. So easiest way to do that is click on the top left cell, press Control T. My table does already have headers, press OK. And let's go do this with this other one as well. If you don't like pressing Control T, highlight everything, go to Insert, and you want to insert a table. Select OK. We're going to name both of these tables so we can keep all of our data straight, especially if you have more than 2 tables. It's really beneficial to name your tables. Head over to Table Design once you click inside the table. Let's name this Budget. And let's go back to Bike Sales. Let's click in here, go to Table Design. Let's name this Sales. Awesome, first step is complete. Now we got to get this data into Power Query. And what we're going to do in Power Query is we're going to unpivot some of this data up here so it looks like this format. And then we're going to append these tables so that we can show both of this data together and do time over time analysis. So let's get started. To get your data into Power Query, if you have data just like this and it's coming right from Excel, you can go click in the table and click from table and range. Also, something to note, if you click from table and range, it will put your data into a table format. So it'll kind of do that step for you too, just so you know, so you don't actually have to do it all at once, but I like naming my tables. Since I've got 2 different data sources, I'm going to close this out. As you can see, the table name already came in. So I'm going to go over here to close and load because I want to load my other data source as well at the same time. So the second option, close and load to. And I'm going to select only create connection right here. Press OK. And we're going to go over to the budget and we're going to select from table and range again. This time we don't have to close it out because now we have all of our data sources. Let's start on this sheet. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unpivot all of these value columns. So it's super easy to do this in Power Query. You can just click on the column you don't want to unpivot, right click, and then select Unpivot Other Columns, just like that. And that now puts our date in one column and our sales in the other column. So I'm going to name this date. I'll double click here just to rename this header. And then this one, I want to make sure it's the same name that is used for the value column in sales. So we have sales amount over here. I'm going to go back to budget. I'm going to rename this sales amount. It's important that they're the same naming convention because when we append these tables, we want them to continue down and not think it's a separate column. So we're looking good here. One thing after you do unpivot tables, sometimes it doesn't pick this up as a date. No problem, we'll just have to tell it it's a date format. There we go. Let's go back to sales. We're gonna do the same thing here. It's reading a date and time. Let's just tell it it's a date. We don't need the time. It's going to ask us, hey, it auto-changed the type. Do you want to replace the current or do you want to add a new step? Right here, I'm going to replace the current just to keep our, if you have a lot of configurations done to these tables, I try and consolidate steps. In this case, we're not going to have a ton of different steps in these. But we've got a date, product, size, sales amount. Over here, we've got date, product, and sales amount. We don't have size, but maybe we didn't budget down to that unit level, which is just fine and pretty realistic. Sometimes you budget at a higher level. So at this point, let's get both of these tables in one. So many different ways to do this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to append the data. So I'm going to go up here to the Home tab. We're going to go Append Queries and append queries as new. You could append it to an existing table in here. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just going to append it to a new one so I can see it. We're only doing 2 tables, so it's very simple. If you've got more than 2, you got to select this one right here. But I'm going to append budget to my sales table, just like that. Perfect. And as you can see, for all of my budgeted amount, I've got a size over here that's kind of in as null. That's totally fine. I'm going to rename this. So double click here. We're going to do sales _ budget. One thing missing from this, we can't tell what table our data is coming from. So let's put a reference column in both of these original queries. We're going to go up here. We're going to select add column. We're going to go to custom column. I'm going to name this scenario. And this one, since we're on the sales, I'm going to call this actuals or just actual. If you just put this in quotes, you're going to, as you can see, the entire column is just named actual all the way down. Let's do the exact same thing for the budget. We're going to do a custom column here. We're going to name this scenario. And we're going to do quotes. Let's do this budget. And press OK. Now, if we go back to our appended table, you can see we've got a new column called scenario, and we've got 2 options. So it's exactly what we wanted. So now we're good to go. We can load this data back into Excel. So go to Home, Close and Load 2. Now, since I didn't close and load that budget table already, I'm going to select only create connection because I don't want it to load a secondary table. But I do want it to load our sales and budget table right here. So I'm going to create a new tab. I'm going to name it KPI Dashboard. And I'm going to load a pivot table up here in the left-hand corner. And let's start off by just showing a simple actuals to revenue chart, revenue to budget, chart. So let's put date down here. And as you can tell, Excel automatically groups these dates. We actually want those groupings. If you want to get rid of those groupings, you right click, you press ungroup right here, or you can select what type of groupings you want. Groupings in its current form doesn't bother me. I'm just going to get rid of the quarter and get rid of the date. I want to keep year and month, but I'm only going to select 2024 and we can expand all just like that. At this point, let's drop in our sales amount and let's drop in our scenario as a column header. So we have a split out. Perfect, looking good so far. One more kind of cosmetic thing I like to do. I like to change the number format of my sales amount. I want to change that into a currency format with no decimal places. And I'm going to rename sales amount. If you call it the exact same name as your pivot field name, it won't actually let you get out of this screen. Easy way to get around this is just to put a space after it, or you can rename it, but that's the easiest way to get around it. Let's now insert a pivot chart based off of this data. So let's select on here. If we select recommended charts, it'll give us some good options. And actually, that's the one I think I want to go with right there. A nice column chart to show the difference month by month for budget versus actual. So that one's good to go. I'm going to select OK. And let's make this chart look a little bit nicer. So I'm going to spread it out so someone can see. I don't like these field values on here. I'm going to hide all field values, but we do need a chart title and we do need some axis titles. I don't need the bottom one because that's pretty clear that that's a date, but for the side over here, let's rename this and call it sales amount. And for our chart title, let's rename that budget versus actual. sales amount by month. Perfect. And if you know, you can click on this chart and we can go to format or design and you can change it around however you want. I really do like this look right here, and that's the look I'm going to stick with for this dashboard. You can make your dashboard look like whatever you want. Does not matter. So we've got one already down. Let's add a few more features to this. Next one, let's copy this pivot table and we're going to change this up a bit. We're just going to look at actuals this time. So I'm just going to select actuals. I'm going to move the scenario over to the filter because I don't need two separate columns. And I want to look at the amount this year, the amount of different products that were sold. So I'm going to put product here instead of years and month. And instead of dollar amount, I am just going to want a line item. Because of how our data is structured, it's structured as one sale per line. We can do this. A lot of the times you can't do this if there's multiple sales per line, but we can actually just change this to a count right here. Excuse me, count, not an average. A count, and we're going to say count of products. And select OK. And as you can see, it's in a dollar format. I'm going to change that. We're going to go back to the number format and go number and select OK. I want to use the check mark for 1,000. I want the comma to show. We obviously were way below that, and I want it to be 0 decimal places so it looks nice and clean. Select OK. Now let's find a good chart for this one. So select your pivot table, go to pivot table analysis. And let's do, excuse me, not pivot table analysis. We're going to go to insert and let's select recommended charts again. Don't really look for a line chart. I think we're going to do a pie chart for this guy just to show the breakout and percentages. As you can see, this is a pretty even percentage against the 4 types of bikes, but if it wasn't, even if it is, it's good to know. So let's click down there. Let's stick it right there. We're going to change this up a little bit to make it look a little bit different. Again, we're going to get rid of these buttons up here. You right click, go hide all field buttons on chart. Let's rename this to count of products sold. And let's change the design to match up here, the same kind of format we're looking for. And I don't like legends showing up like that. I want to check out some more options here and see what we can do. We can do bottom, side, top. If you like the legends on there, you can do that. I'm actually going to get rid of them and I'm going to do a data label instead. And I'm going to do a data label and do a data call out. So what this allows is we can show the name of the category and then the percentage breakout, and we don't have to have legends on there. So here we go. I kind of like the look of this. You can set it up however you want. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. We'll kind of reformat this thing as we go. Let's do 2 more. So we're going to hand make 2 KPI cards. The first one's going to be a gross profit margin, and it's going to show the year-to-date profit margin, and we're going to use a spark line to get it to show a quick chart in the background of what we're looking for. So easiest way to do this, let's just copy our existing table up here and come down here. And as a lot of you know, that if you were to add more products, this would be an issue. This could potentially run into other tables. So you want to be mindful of that, and you might even want to exclude to your top 5 products or 10 products if you are doing this. And there's absolutely ways to exclude that. But for our case, where we have a fixed amount of products, and in cases where you're using month and year and you're only ever going to be filtering by 1 year, you don't really run into that issue when setting up dashboards like this. You can alternatively, if you do run into that problem, you can set this up horizontally instead of vertically, and that won't be as much of an issue. But I set mine up vertically because I know the time periods and my product counts are not going to change. So down here, let's do a gross margin. So I'm gonna move this scenario over again, and we're just gonna look at actuals. Just a note for all you following along, I did add bike cost in here that was missing, and that will flow through to our pivot chart, and you'll see that in the example data. So let's set up a gross margin calculation. First, we got to click inside the pivot table, go to pivot table, analyze up top. We're going to go to field items and set, and we're going to click calculated fields. So we're going to make a calculated field inside the pivot table. We could also have done this in Power Query, but I'm just going to do it here instead. It's a little bit easier. Gross margin. I'm going to call this gross profit margin. And to set up a gross margin calculation, we need to do the sales amount minus the cost. Close your parentheses and divide it by sales amount. Press OK, and as you can see, that'll automatically pop up. It's showing up as a dollar value. So let's come on over here and change that. I click on the field, go to field value settings, go to format numbers. We're going to change that to a percentage. I don't want any decimal places. That looks just fine. And I'm going to change this to just gross profit margin and put a space at the end so I can close it. Awesome. So now we've got our gross profit margin. We actually don't need our sale amount anymore. So I'm going to get rid of that field right there. And we got a gross profit margin all the way down to October. As of this video date, it is in October. So we're not going to have it for the rest of the year yet. That's okay. Let's make a KPI. So since we're not going to use a chart for this, this one's going to be a little bit more specific. Let's select a portion of this. Let's do like that, and we can change this later. We're going to merge these cells together. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a spark line to show a chart in the background of what our gross profit margin has looked like so far. So in order to do that, we're going to go to Insert. We're going to select Line. It's asking where our data range is. Our data range is actually going to be over here. And I'm going to scroll all the way down, October, November, December. So it's going to fill in 2 more. We're actually going to get rid of the grand totals as well because we don't want that to show up right now. Press Enter. And location range. I want that location to show up right there. Press OK. Perfect. Now let's come on over here and let's go to pivot table, analyze, design. And I want to off for rows and columns for the grand total because as we add more data for the rest of the year, this will populate down and this spark line will also populate because we've selected the last 2 rows of data. So there we go. We got a nice little visual spark line. If you want to edit the spark line, you can select the cell it's in, come on up here. We can change all different types of stuff. We can set high points and low points to show up on the graph. You can do a little bit different styles too, whatever you would like there. You can play around with that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put our measure in here. This one, let's do a year-to-date gross profit margin first. So let's merge all these cells on top here and let's put a title up here, gross profit margin. And then inside this cell, we need a year-to-date function. As you can see down here, we actually got rid of our year-to-date. So I'm going to make one more pivot table. I'm going to make sure to put it down so it has room to grow down there. And I'm going to get rid of month. And as you can see, this will just be year-to-date now for actual. So let's make a formula that will capture let's capture this year-to-date function right there, this year-to-date value right here. So up here, we're gonna do the concat formula. So equals concat, and we're gonna put our text in here first. So it's gonna be year-to-date, colon, space. We're gonna close the parenthesis here because then I want my value to come up next. And I'm gonna just select this value, press F4, close parentheses. As you can see, we're gonna have a decimal issue up here. So in order to fix that, go back into our formula. We're gonna put a rounding. There's actually a few different ways to do this. You can use the text to do this. You can use a few other things. I'm just gonna round it. Round that times 100, comma, 1 decimal place, comma, open your do a quotation mark. Let's do parenthesis, parenthesis close, because I want the parenthesis to show up afterwards. There we go. So what I did is I literally turned this percentage back into a whole number, went to the 1 decimal place and then added a percentage to the end. Again, there's multiple ways to do this. You can use the text function just to tell it to be a percentage. So you can do it however you like. Let's change the text over here. I want to make this a little bit bigger. I want to make this bold, and I want to make this orange. And I'm going to put it off to the side for now. You can change it however it looks best with your chart. And then for now, let's give this a color. I really like using these styles up here. I think they're really easy ways to make your data look good without spending a ton of time on there. I'm going to put a border on this, outside border, and I'm going to color this border. We're going to color it blue to kind of match. There we go. So there is our first KPI card. Let's copy this, and we're going to make one. It's going to look a little bit different. The next one's not going to have a spark line in it. We're actually going to go to spark line and clear it out of here. The next one is just going to be gross profit margin. Actually, I'm going to bold both of these. I like that look. And we want to have this month. We want it to indicate what's going on this month. And then we want to indicate a change over month to month. So I'm actually going to start by deleting what's in here. And I'm going to unmerge this, and we're going to create 2 separate areas. We're going to create one merged area here and one merged area here. This side over here is going to be a change month over month, and this side's going to say this month and give the value of this month. So in order for that to happen, there's a few different ways to do this. You can create a lookup for current month. I'm gonna do it the easy way. And I'm just gonna create 2 more pivot charts, and we are going to, down here, we're gonna do month right there. And then actually what I'm gonna do is I need to move this pivot table first, excuse me. And I'm gonna ask it to filter, and you can use these dynamic date filters right here. So as you can see, I put month back down in the rows, and I'm gonna use a date filter, and I'm gonna say this month on it. So that'll keep it down to 1 value now. And I'm actually just gonna delete this and then copy this guy right here and make another one. It is also best practice too, if you have a lot of these, to label what KPIs these are going to. I do that a lot. So this label would be current month, this label would be next month, gross profit margin, just so you can keep track. We don't have a ton of them here, but just kind of a best practice thing to do. If you go to month now, let's do last month. Perfect. So this is this month, this is last month. Now that we have that, we can go back up here. We can create another concat formula. Use concat, and we're gonna put this month, colon, let's do end parentheses, and we're gonna do kind of the same setup as we had last time. We're gonna do round. We're gonna take this month's percentage, I'm gonna times it by 100. I'm gonna round it by 1, and then we are going to add a percentage sign. Let's see how this looks. Perfect. That is what I want it to look like. We're gonna center it, and that looks good. And then over here, I want to do a change month over month. We're gonna use conditional formatting for this. So let's do equals this month minus last month, just a really easy change. And then we are going to go up to conditional formatting, and we are going to select icons here. Now I go back in here just to make sure that these are selected correctly how I want them. These are based off of percentages. I'm actually going to base them off of numbers, because if it's a positive number, I just want it to show green, and if it's a negative number, I want it to show red. If you want to set it up to show yellow as well, that works too. So if it's greater than or equal to 0, I want it to show green. If it's less than 0, I want it to show red. Okay, and I don't want yellow. Perfect. That one's good to go. We're going to center this. And then I actually want to label what this is exactly, because it's not super clear right now. So I'm going to unmerge this. I'm going to merge just the top. And then we're going to create a little label down here. And we're going to call this change month over month. And for smaller labels, I love to use this little, this cell style right here, the explanatory text. I find it not distracting and pretty good. And you know, we can play around a little bit with the sizing and see what we like. Also the text sizing. Sometimes the arrows show up a little bit better depending on your text size too. So just kind of be aware of that. But for the most part, all of our, everything we want materially is here. Let's just clean this up a little bit, make this look a little bit nicer. I'm gonna add an extra row here. I'm gonna take all of this and merge it together. Call it Mike's Bikes KPI Dashboard. Spell dashboard right. And then I'm going to use, again, I'm going to go back to using our custom colors here. I think that's a really easy way to do it. Let's do this. So we're going to just change our charts to fit in here. Let's put a border around it, and then let's do our best to kind of just reformat some of these charts so that they're in here how we want them to be. And that looks good to me. And then the very last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to view and I'm going to take off my grid lines. So now what we can do is we can export this on a weekly basis. So if we go over to page layout and we select all of this and we say print area, set print area, we can go and you can change this into a PDF and print it out as a PDF or save to PDF and send it once a week. You can also just send the document too. But this is a quick, easy dashboard that you can give to people in your organization just as a quick company indicators of how you're doing. Let's talk about data updating and refreshing. So let's come on back over to bike sales and say we're in November now. So 11-1-2024. We sold a hybrid bike, a small. We sold it for $1,569, and the cost on this was $1,300. And now we want this to be reflected in next month's. All you have to do is once you update the data, this most likely is going to be a data drop from a system. If it is a manual entry, you're coming maybe from a different sheet, and you can clean up your data in Power Query. You don't have to change it to enter it in Excel. Come on back over here, and all you have to do to update your data is go to the Data tab and select the Refresh All. And as you can see, we now got that new number for November that popped up right there. Obviously, this didn't change over yet because we are still in the month of October, but as soon as you hit November 1st, that'll change right over for you, and your year-to-date number will also change. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you'd like more info on Power Query, I have a lot of videos listed on Power Query. This one's a little bit different than my normal videos, but thank you for joining.